More than 90% of professional stock pickers fail to beat a strategy that takes about 10 minutes to set up. Not beginners, professionals, people with research teams, expensive software, and decades of experience. And while they're trying to outperform the market, millions of ordinary Americans are missing out on one of the simplest ways to build wealth. Not because they're making bad investments, because nobody ever showed them a better option. If you're putting money into a 401k, Roth IRA, or even thinking about investing for the first time, this strategy could affect every dollar you invest for the next 30 years. It's called an index fund. And once you understand why it beats most professionals, investing starts to make a lot more sense. In the next 10 minutes, I will explain exactly what an index fund is, why it beats 90% of professionals, which specific funds to buy, and how much you would have right now if you had invested just $100 a month 10 years ago. And there's one thing about index funds, one specific fee hidden inside most investment accounts that can quietly eat over $100,000 of your retirement. I will show you the exact math near the end. But first, let me tell you about Nathan. Nathan is 33 years old, lives in Portland, makes $65,000 a year. 3 years ago, he decided to start investing. He downloaded a trading app, started watching YouTube videos about stock picks, followed a few accounts on social media that seemed to know what they were doing. He bought individual stocks, Tesla, Apple, a couple of pharmaceutical companies someone recommended, a crypto token his friend told him about. In 3 years, Nathan's portfolio returned 4% total. During the same period, the S&P 500 returned over 30%. Nathan spent hours researching, hours watching charts, hours reading earnings reports, and the market beat him without trying. An index fund is the simplest investment that exists. Instead of picking individual stocks, an index fund buys every stock in a specific market index. The most famous index is the S&P 500. It tracks the 500 largest publicly traded companies in the United States: Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Google, Johnson & Johnson, Walmart, JP Morgan, Visa. 500 companies across every major industry. When you buy an S&P 500 index fund, you own a tiny piece of all 500 companies in one purchase. You are not betting on one company succeeding. You are betting on the American economy succeeding. And over the last 100 years, that bet has paid off. The S&P 500 has averaged roughly 10% per year. Not every year. Some years it drops 20%. Some years it gains 30%. But averaged over any 20-year period in history, it has never lost money. Never. There is also a total stock market index fund. Instead of 500 companies, it holds almost 4,000. Every publicly traded company in America. Large companies, medium companies, small companies, the entire market in one fund. That is what Nathan should have bought 3 years ago, instead of picking stocks one by one. Now, here is the part that changes how you think about investing. Every year, S&P Dow Jones Indices publishes a report called the SPIVA Scorecard. It compares actively managed funds run by professional stock pickers against simple index funds. The results are devastating. Over a 1-year period, 65% of large cap fund managers underperformed the S&P 500 in 2024. Over 5 years, more than 80% underperformed. Over 15 years, more than 90% underperformed. And here is what makes it even worse. Over 20 years, there was not a single category, domestic or international, where the majority of active managers outperformed. Not one. And among those rare managers who did outperform in one period, almost none of them repeated it in the next period. Not a single top quartile fund from 2020 remained in the top quartile by 2024. Zero. That means even if you could pick the best fund manager, they probably will not be the best next time. The data is not ambiguous. The data is a massacre. Now, the hidden fee I mentioned at the beginning. Every fund charges something called an expense ratio. It is the annual percentage the fund takes from your money to cover its costs. For an actively managed mutual fund, the average expense ratio is about 0.7%. Some charge over 1%. For an S&P 500 index fund, the expense ratio is 0.03%. That sounds like a tiny difference. 0.7 versus 0.03. It is not tiny. Let me show you. If you invest $500 a month for 30 years at 10% average return, with the index fund fee of 0.03%, you end up with approximately $986,000. With the actively managed fund fee of 0.7%, you end up with approximately $871,000. $115,000 less, from a fee that sounded like a rounding error. You did not lose that money to the market. You did not lose it to bad timing. You did not lose it to a crash. You paid it to a fund manager who probably underperformed the index anyway. $115,000. 4 worse results. That is the fee trap. And millions of Americans are in it right now without knowing. So which funds should you actually buy? Here are the specific index funds by brokerage. If you are at Fidelity, FXAIX, Fidelity 500 Index Fund. Expense ratio 0.015%. Or FZROX, Fidelity Zero Total Market Index Fund. Expense ratio 0, literally no fee. If you are at Vanguard, VOO, Vanguard S, and P500 ETF. Expense ratio 0.03%. Or VTI, Vanguard Total Stock Market ETF. Same 0.03. If you are at Schwab, SWPPX, Schwab S&P 500 Index Fund. Expense ratio 0.02%. Or SWTSX, Schwab Total Stock Market Index Fund. Any of these will work. They all track the same market. They all have near zero fees. They all give you instant diversification across thousands of companies. Pick the one that matches your brokerage. Put your money in. Set up automatic contributions. And do not touch it for decades. That is the entire strategy. Nathan sold his individual stocks. All of them. He moved everything into VTI at Vanguard. One fund. The entire US stock market. He set up automatic contributions of $400 a month, and he deleted the trading app from his phone. He stopped watching stock charts. He stopped reading earnings predictions. He stopped listening to people on social media telling him what to buy. In the first year, his portfolio grew more than it had in the previous 3 years combined. Not because the market had an exceptional year, because he stopped trying to beat it. If Nathan keeps contributing $400 a month at 10% average return, at an expense ratio of 0.03%, by age 60, his index fund will be worth approximately $790,000 from the same paycheck, with less work, less stress, less time spent, and a better result than 90% of professional fund managers would have given him. And if you are just starting and you think you cannot afford $400 a month, here is what $100 a month looks like. $100 a month at 10% for 10 years becomes approximately $20,600. For 20 years, about $76,000. For 30 years, $226,000 from $100 a month in one fund with no stock picking, no market timing, no stress. The amount does not matter as much as the time. Starting now is worth more than starting later with more money. Index funds are not exciting. They are not flashy. Nobody brags about them at parties. Nobody posts their index fund gains on social media. And that is exactly why they work. Because wealth is not built by excitement. It is built by consistency. Over time, with low fees and no interference. Are you investing in index funds or trying to pick stocks? Drop one of these below. Index fund, if you already invest in one. Stock picking, if you are still choosing individual stocks. Not yet. If you have not started investing at all. Or switching. If this video made you change your mind. If you have not opened an investment account yet. My $100 investing video walks you through it step by step. It is on your screen right now. Subscribe to Wealth Storyline. Every week, we break down the money systems most Americans were never taught. See you there. This video is for educational and entertainment purposes only and should not be considered financial advice.